is your Filipino radio experience in Las Vegas. PHLV Radio.
Are you ready to travel? We got all the travel buzz here on Smart People Travel Wise with Alvin Adriano on PHLV Radio.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. And we are back in the studio for another engaging discussion on travel. We're excited that you're here with us today on Smart People Travel Wise. And if you just tuned in, or if this is just your first time, or you've never caught the show, my name is Alvin Adriano, CEO of TravelWise International, and we have a great show planned for you today. But before we get started, if you're just tuning in, as a reminder, all of our viewers, if you're watching this live, please hashtag live. And if you're watching on the replay, just go ahead and hashtag replay. Also, remember to share where you're watching from so we can make sure to acknowledge all of our viewers. And also, don't forget to catch our show on Facebook, YouTube, or you can listen on the show on Amazon Fire, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. Or, like I mentioned before, you can download the app PHLV Radio, available on all iOS and Android devices. So, I'm always say that I'm a very personal person and I love meeting new people and really discovering different cultures and how different destinations really affect or influence different people. It's why I'm a travel advisor and why I'm in the travel industry. But during my experiences, I usually get to meet some really awesome people, not only just colleagues, but they become great friends. People who I always are able to experience wonderful moments, but also watch them grow in their careers. So today's guest is no stranger, and I was so glad to meet Ross in 2016 in China. We were traveling together with a group of travel professionals for a conference in the inner parts of China. And through our trip, we were able to make some lifelong friends and have managed to be successful and continue to leave a legacy of their own. He's a good friend. He's an established writer, an editor, an awesome husband, and most of all, a proud father. So please smash the heart buttons for my friend, Ross Kenneth Urken. What's going on, Ross?
Good to talk to you, Alvin. I'm so glad to connect in this way. And as you say, travel is so special in terms of getting an influence from the culture and learning the world, but it's also such a chance and palette to share the experiences with people along the way, both from those destinations or from, closer to home. So we really had a great time over there in Guizhou, and definitely turned into a few good pieces on my end and a lot of great, I think, travel knowledge on your end.
Yeah, it was such a great time. We met a lot of great people. And again, sometimes the best part of a trip are the people you meet on the trip. And so that was a certain case, and it was awesome. I know you, we met, so many different times and different conferences. Before all our viewers, you want to just give a little background of what you do and, how you came up in the travel industry?
Sure. Yeah, it was almost by accident because I have always loved to travel, and I did unfortunately have a fear of flying, if you can believe it, from age 13 to 20. And I think that that hiatus from travel perhaps augmented my desire to get back in the world and really make my way around to the four corners. So I'm, a travel writer who specializes, I think, at the intersection of luxury, culture, and environment, particularly conservation. And I write for, Travel and Leisure and the Washington Post and Bloomberg Pursuits and National Geographic. And my focus is very character driven. I like to meet, the astrologer in Nepal who uses ancient methods endemic to the Himalayas to read the stars. I like to, meet the fishermen trying to preserve the marine biology life in Jamaica, stakeholders in local environments who are often, much more interesting than bold-faced names who stay at some of the fancy resorts.
Yeah. And female elephant polo players.
That is one of my favorite stories. Yeah,
that was a good one.
It's quite an interesting story. Over in Bangkok, they have the King's Elephant Polo match every year, and it's much slower than horse polo and much heavier, but it is raising funds for elephant conservation and rehabilitation. Some of these elephants were essentially homeless, wandering the streets of Bangkok. That, of course, it doesn't, remove the tension that exists with the mahouts. And, with everything, there's a benefit, and sometimes aspects that are, they're not beyond reproach. They should be criticized. So, but in this particular story, it was so interesting that these powerful women, and I like to celebrate the underdog because they really were the only female team in this polo tournament. They were out there kicking a lot of butt and really raising the profile of what this event was. It's often been a beauty contest for the comely international women who live in Bangkok and locals. But they, got in there on the pitch and showed that, it wasn't just a man's world.
No, that's awesome. And those are things that are also so great about travel writing, about really diving into the cultures, really finding out the persona of the people. I think it's great that what you've been doing, and I've been following some of your articles and just but you didn't really start in travel, right? You started in finance.
Yeah. I've always been a journalist. I think I had a ill-advised, perhaps instinct toward law very early on, like in my teens, but yeah, I've always been a journalist. And I, right out of college, did the Wall Street Journal. And then I was doing a lot of financial media, along with some entertainment and nightlife coverage in New York for, New York Magazine and the likes. And I sort of found that I was writing stories that were fascinating from a business perspective, because I do love this who would have thunk it connection in business where something rises in perhaps an unexpected context. But my passion really was travel, and I felt under-traveled. I, for the aforementioned fear, and also I just had this passion. And as a journalist, I was also perhaps not so deep-pocketed. So I was looking for magazines to finance my travels and the stories I might tell. And so, I started pitching a couple of stories, and I think my first couple, one was about the Jewish pirates of Jamaica, and sort of an unexpected rich history there that have also, and I've, spent a lot of time with their descendants, and, the history goes back to the Inquisition in Spain, and a lot of the Jews came to the Caribbean, and Moises Cohen Enriquez, one of the most famous Jamaican pirates, was the right-hand man of Captain Henry Morgan, Captain Morgan. I pitched another story to Cuba to investigate the endangered Cuban bee hummingbird, which is literally the size of a bee. And I went in to the forest in the Bay of Pigs. And I was such a gumshoe then that I traveled to Cuba. Yeah, I traveled to Cuba without cash. You can't get cash as an American out of the ATM. You can't get it wired. And I had to hire a fixer through a journalist connection. So from there, I started thinking, I can, you hear more stories, you start thinking. Sometimes I would just go on Google Maps and say, where do I want to go? What's happening there, and start reading local news, investigating, building contacts with hotels and travel experts. And that, one thing led to another. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I try to chronicleize, seeing where you came from, and, it's different. And I remember I was looking at your I think you wrote about Bitcoin at like $140 back then.
Yeah.
Which,
if only I had invested then.
Yeah, I was like, man, that was in 2013. Like, man, what would you have thought if you knew in the future it would be 47,000 of Bitcoin?
I probably would have maybe become a hotel owner or been completely full-time travel writing and not doing other sorts of editing work. But it's definitely fun to have the contrast because you can't be on the road full time, and I love to cherry pick a few trips a year and really zone in. I'm a much more I think intellectual traveler and someone who enjoys travel more if I'm writing a story. It's rare that I'm on the road in a hotel, not writing a story, or in a place. And you just become much deeper and more deeply familiarized with the environment and with the people there. If you're, there in a professional capacity, because it all comes from passion. And I think to do what you do as a travel advisor and, company leader, and to do what I do, you have to be fundamentally open from your heart and soul to the culture, respect it, understand what makes it tick, and then, just curious and sponge-like to absorb it all. So.
No, great points. I totally agree. I mean, this has been a difficult time for a lot of people. People have been really self-reflecting and figuring out, what really ticks or inspires them and motivates them to get up every day or to do the things that they do. And so you brought it up. I mean, how has travel journalism changed during the pandemic? Has there been like ebbs and flows, or has it been consistent, or is it messaging all on this? Like, give us some insight.
Yeah, it's funny because I do think that there was an obvious slowdown. People were not doing reporting trips, fam trips. They were on lockdown, and then post-vaccine, people started to dip a toe in the waters. And even my family, I have my daughter Odella, who's 17 months now, and just before she turned 1, post-vaccination, we went to Anguilla, to the beautiful resort Capjaluca. And it's it's a Belmond property now. It's just like a gem in the Caribbean. And they were so strict in their protocols that, they had maybe 6 cases of COVID total. And, anytime that happened, they would shut the island down. And, you had to get tested before you left and on arrival. Be quarantined in your suite, boohoo. But so, dipping a toe back in is essential. I think a lot of people wrote explainers, a lot of people wrote service journalism pieces about, how to navigate cruise ships, how to navigate certain restrictions and protocols and what to expect. And we were all sort of in this guessing game. I, am lucky that I had gone to Japan, right before the pandemic really hit in the winter of 2020. And so I had a couple of stories and reporting yarns banked. So I was able to still publish. And I think a lot of people relied on what was in the tank. But yeah, it was also just a time to stay stationary, reflect, be a little more cognizant of the privilege of travel and how lucky we were to globetrot and, gear up, get some fuel in the tank for the next time. And, I do have some travel coming. Well, I'm currently in a haunted hotel called the Skirvin Hilton in Oklahoma City. So that's my current assignment. I won't go into any dark corners of this room because we might see an apparition. But, then I have Barbados coming up and Dubai and potentially the Maldives. And, it's all a calculus of benefits and detriments. And you want to be responsible and go to places that have high vaccination percentages. and also, be vaccinated yourself and follow protocols. But, it's all being evaluated on the fly.
Yeah, everything's on the fly. I mean, I totally agree with you. We saw a lot of inefficiency with communication. People were trying to find whatever information on the internet, on social media platforms, because they didn't know. I mean, there's just so many contradicting stories, protocols, quarantines, whatever. And so social media played a big part in basically turning into an educational resource or a community space where people were sharing information. Do you see media or travel media changing and evolving, or, complementing social media in the future?
Yeah, I think they're obviously complementary forces. And we're at a point also where and I think it's a struggle for media in general, where you might see a scoop on Twitter, or not yesterday when Instagram and Facebook were down, but, on those platforms. And you're able to, glean what's happening. Are vaccines going to be required? Will foreign travelers be allowed back into the US, and vice versa? Where can you go? And I think that can be complementary, because you, as a travel journalist, you want to be trusted, and not everything you read as first published on social media is trustworthy. And it's obviously important to do thorough fact checking. And if you're beat to a scoop, which might just be restrictions lifted on these countries, you obviously want to go in depth. And I think when you're actually reporting the piece for a media outlet. And, I obviously have done more of the service journalism, and I'm not particularly geared toward the health and safety element, but it's inevitable that you have to do that when considering, pieces. And for Bloomberg, we did a series about daydreaming, like where we wanted to go. And we had the obvious preamble of, okay, you want to go to Spain. Well, here's the current situation. And it's obviously quite in contrast to the usual convivial setting you'll find in, Andalusia. But when things get back to normal, this is what you can expect. And, even when I went to Anguilla, you have to indicate some of the testing protocols and the strict, protocols that are in place to make sure that everyone can enjoy travel and hopefully get back to normal before too long.
Yeah, I mean, it's media plays such an important part in the recovery. I mean, content has just been exploding all over the place, and people are just using their platforms or their audience to really connect and have messaging. And so, as a global traveler, you mentioned you've been traveling already. Working, bring the family trip, work trip kind of deal. So as a traveler, as a global traveler, is there things that you've seen that you kind of like, hey, I like that going forward? Or, what are things that you kind of like, I kind of like that's going, or, hey, I can't wait for this to be done with?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I do like that, I'm a bit of a clean freak in general, and I like the increase in hand washing, the increase in, Purell use. I was noticing, and I'm now in JFK, I'm wondering if it's also in LaGuardia, but there were these sort of non-enclosed security X-ray centers. So if you're, going through the metal detector, you're not enclosed in that little room. You just sort of put your hands up or at your side, and it's all open. And that felt just more breathable and less claustrophobic. I'm finding in the hotels just a little touch of amenity kits with wipes, and I hope that stays, because I think that people want to feel hygienic when traveling. And there were the times when you would like get on a plane and take airborne, which never works, or turmeric, and just try to boost your immune system. And I do think that obviously we're a bit more health conscious in general. And, maybe people would have gotten on a plane with a fever before. And I think now they're often prevented or are staying home. And, that's for the common good. So, but I haven't found anything that is too disruptive. Obviously, no one wants to, have a COVID test into his brain, every time you step on a flight. So, when safe and when this, goes away or simmers down, hopefully that will too.
Yeah, I think that's my least favorite portion of that. I mean, I just did a post where I asked people, how many times do you get a PCR test? And I'm like, this is like my 12th time this month.
Yeah.
So that's kind of annoying.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, thank you so much. I mean, I'm so glad that you're able to come out and spend and share some insight with all of our viewers, because I think it's important to get different perspectives. From your perspective, I guess, you're in the journalistic world. Is there any tips or advice that you can share with our viewers today about traveling in the future?
I think that you have to trust your instincts and your own comfort levels. I think that obviously in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of flight shaming and travel shaming. I think now people who are being responsible and vaccinated are, as I've said, they're dipping a toe back in the travel waters. And I think go at your own speed. The world will be there. There's no need to rush it. But I do think that, travel is so restorative, and it allows us to take the more mundane aspects of our existence and our everyday, sort of quotidian routine. And we're able to reflect more deeply by coming to a new context and seeing how it contrasts our daily life. So obviously, travel is so beautiful, and I live to travel. It's reviving, and I think that do plenty of research, plan ahead. Getting prepared and packed for travel is already time consuming and anxiety inducing, and you want to be a little bit more slower paced about how you go about it. And I actually say that I'm sort of Russian by blood. My grandfather is from Latvia, and I spent a lot of time in Russia in college. I studied the language, and they have before you leave on a trip, however long, you sit for the road. And I do that still. And you're rushing out to the airport or rushing to the Uber, and the Uber's downstairs. I sit, and you be amazed that you won't forget your phone, your wallet, your whatever, your deodorant, your toothbrush. You will remain calm. And I think, applying that physically, yes, but also mentally, just like having a little bit more zen to go into a trip, less frantic, especially these days, can really mean the world.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I think people have become more mindful. Their travels or anything that they do is more purposeful because they see the importance of what it can do. I think, although we were in the worst contraction of international arrivals ever, it just accelerated the industry because, we need digitalization. We need innovation in travel. I think this is going to help streamline everything. I'm like you. I'm so glad the airlines partnered with the cleaning products. I was like, oh, that's awesome. They should be clean like that, that should be like regulated.
For sure.
I'm with you. I wasn't sick all last year, I was worried about the virus, but I didn't get a cold. I didn't get a fever. So there are things that are coming out and positive. And like you, I've already started traveling with my family, and it really revolves on people's comfortability. So I really am glad that you shared that with everybody, because I think it's important that, everyone recognize, there's stuff in the media, but for all their own, just evaluate and get the right information and then evaluate what's best for you and your family. So with that said, Ross, any final thoughts?
No, I'm really looking forward to, a time where I can continue sharing the world with my daughter. That's really, I say I'm not going to be exclusively a family travel writer. I'm exploring all sorts of narratives, but it's really a blessing to see the world through her eyes. I do have, a huge desire to make it to the Philippines. You're my big, evangelist for Southeast Asian travel, and it's high on my list. Odella will have to get there, and I also, one of your lesser known talents, and I have to call you out, is karaoke. So I look forward to a far flung locale where we do a little KTV again, and enjoy it in the company of interesting people from around the world.
The challenge is accepted, and we'll do it in the Philippines.
I love it.
It's so awesome to have you, Gross, and I'm so glad you were able to spend some time. I know you're a busy man, but yeah, thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure to have you on and share your insight, bud.
Thank you so much, Alvin. Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Awesome. So yeah, everybody, Ross is awesome, right? Yeah, he's awesome. He's always a pleasure to pick his brain and learn about all of the things he thinks about and the way he processes the world. We have all different experiences, and the moments that we have in our lives, they really create the framework of what we call our life. The interactions, the relationships, experiences, all of what makes us so unique. Traveling only accelerates the process. So meeting Ross years ago and just watching both of us grow in our industries is just an awesome feeling, and absolute respect for new parents as well. The gift of life is just amazing, and I'm so glad that Ross is spending it with his wife and sharing the world with their child. We live for these moments to learn, to grow, to inspire, and basically to share. And so if you want to create moments, you can always reach out to our agency, TravelWise International, at 301-248-8898, or visit us at itravelwise.com. So thank you to all of our viewers and listeners who've been able to join us today. Your support is so humbling, and with you, this would not be possible. So thank you for sharing all of your love. Please spread it around and let us know what all your comments. Smart People Travel Wise airs every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time and 3 p.m. East Coast time. So until next time, Smart People Travel Wise.
Are you ready to travel? We got all the travel buzz here on Smart People Travel Wise with Alvin Adriano on PHLV Radio.